All right. Okay. Y'all gonna have to excuse the headset. Has some technical difficulties, so we got the old school headset today. Y'all try not to judge me too heavy. Hold on. I had to turn that around. Y'all try not to judge me too heavy. We got the old school headset on today. Let me check my volume. We had some technical difficulties. So a couple minutes late, but we're here. We're here. You see the thumbnail. We're going to get right into it. You see the thumbnail. You see the topic. Man, I feel some type of way right now. I'm feeling some type of way right now because the people that I used to, before I got into this YouTube stuff, I've only been into it for a few months now, like uploading consistently and stuff. But before I got into this, like trying to get on YouTube and stuff, some of the people that I used to watch consistently were these two, Jimmy Dore and Kyle Kulinski. I looked at them as they were on the left, pushing third parties, pushing alternatives to the Democratic Party, calling out the issues with both the Democratic and the Republican Party. I was like, that's what I like to see. If you think about someone like Kyle Kulinski, he went out and started with Cenk Uygur and the TYT. He went out and started the Justice Democrats. These are the folks that got AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, elected. These are the people who laid down the groundwork to start a whole new party called the Justice Democrats. Got the AOCs elected. Got Ilhan Omar elected. Got a lot of these leftists. They're falling under Democratic parties and they're largely useless now. But the platforms that they ran on, listen, we're not taking any money from big donors. This is what influenced the Bernie Sanders movement back in 2016. We're not taking any money from big donors. We're only taking money from the little guy. Our average donation size is $27. We're not doing any corporate donors. If you take corporate donations, you do not qualify as a Justice Democrat. I'm like, this is a new platform. They're pushing some Leftern ideologies. They're left of the Democratic Party. They're pushing ideologies that is left of the Democratic Party. That's what I like to see. I was watching Jimmy Dore and Kyle Kulinski for years now. I'm talking about since I was fresh out of college, right? Fast forward, you finally have a leftist party, someone in the name of Cornel West, someone who has a track record of being consistently against the military-industrial complex, consistently calling out issues with both the Republican and the Democratic Party. It's not like Bernie Sanders is going to fold. It's not like Bernie Sanders is not going to endorse Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton after they steal the elections from Bernie Sanders. Cornel West is like a Bernie Sanders with integrity. A stronger Cornel West. Cornel West is like the black version of Bernie Sanders, only he has more integrity and he's not going to bow down at the last minute and endorse the same party that cheated him out of the primaries. As a matter of fact, he's not even running in the Democratic Party, despite having a lot of connections in the Democratic Party. He's going so far as to run in a third party and legitimize third parties. So when you see these people like Kyle Kulinski and Jimmy Dore not supporting Cornel West, this will be perfect timing for those brands to support Cornel West. So to see them do the opposite, to see Jimmy Dore give RFK a pass. RFK is on his platform talking about Palestine and Israel. Israel is better than Palestine. Israel hasn't done anything wrong to Palestine. Palestinians are attacking Israel. This is what RFK is saying on this leftist podcaster's interview. Jimmy Dore has no critique, no pushback, no defense of the Palestinian people, no pushback to RFK saying, oh yeah, Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. First of all, Israel is a theocracy. If it was a democracy, then the Palestinians would have the same rights and a one-state solution would be viable. A one-state solution would be viable. If it was a democracy, it's not. It's not viable because the Jews in Israel don't think they would be outnumbered by the Palestinians, and then it would no longer be a quote-unquote Jewish state. If the Palestinians were allowed to vote in a democracy, then Israel would no longer be a Jewish state. So Israel is not a democracy. Israel is a theocracy supporting a Jewish state. Jimmy Dore has no pushback in this regard. Nothing to say on this topic. But when Cornel West comes on and says, hey, there's fascists in the Republican Party and in the Democratic Party, I'm not trying to slander my boy Bernie Sanders. Cornel West says, I don't want to slander. Cornel West says, I don't want to slander Bernie West because he's supporting the Democrats. Bernie Sanders is scared of Donald Trump. Cornel West has the grace to give people the freedom to think for themselves, come up with their own ideologies, come up with their own perspectives. Jimmy Dore is going to accuse Cornel West of not recognizing there's a problem with both parties. Not only Jimmy Dore, but Kyle Kulinski are coming together to demonize the only legitimate and the most prominent third-party candidate on the ticket. More than a year before it's even election time. They're already on record crapping on this guy. And they're taking, I'm going to play the video, but I just gotta introduce the topic first. They're taking the stance. They're taking the stance that they're doing this. They're critiquing Cornel West. They're trying to push him because he doesn't know any better. He needs better coaching. They're talking down, patronizing this guy. Cornel West is a Harvard professor. Been in the activist streets for decades. But they've got a tip that maybe Cornel West hadn't considered. That being said, we're going to play this video. I'm going to be reacting. And I usually don't do whole length reaction videos. This is a fair use situation. I'm going to be stopping it, giving my comments. I usually don't do videos like this. I don't do like a whole video just focused on responding to another video. I usually don't do these types of reaction videos. This is a first. If you support the channel, first of all, be sure to hit the thumbs up button. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to the channel. But we're going to get into it. Just because I saw this video, I was like, dude, we got to talk about this. And I was going to break it up and just talk about segments, but the whole thing was so cringy. I can't just break it up and just, let's just talk about this segment, because the whole thing was bad. Kyle Kulinski's talking about Cornel West. What are you doing? No, Kyle, Jimmy, what are you doing? What are you doing? We're going to have to play it. Because it was bad, man. It's been bad. I'm talking about Jimmy Dore's video first, but Kyle Kulinski, we're going to get into him too. It's bad. What are you guys doing? Are you trying to alienate all of your black viewers? Because Jimmy, you're talking about there's no such thing as white supremacy to Cornel West, a black presidential hopeful. What? This man is in his 60s. You think he's never seen? All right. Let's play it. Let's get into it. We're gonna have to get into it. Let me pull some music. Now, when the video starts, he's going to be responding to a clip of Cornel West saying that Bernie Sanders has legitimate fears. Bernie Sanders has legitimate fears about Donald Trump winning. That's it. Not that Bernie Sanders is right. Not that you should vote for Democrats instead of him, who's running third party. But just, it's a legitimate fear not to want Donald Trump to win. Jimmy hears this response, and here we go.
So when my what I would say to you here, and this is a big point, and I'm trying to impress upon you going forward, that when you do that, you sound a little bit like Joe Biden, and what you're doing is you're giving a pass to Bernie Sanders and anybody else for voting lesser of two evils.
You sound like Joe Biden by giving a pass to Bernie Sanders for voting lesser of two evils. The man is literally running third party. How can he sound like he's giving a pass to Bernie Sanders for voting for Joe Biden while simultaneously running against Joe Biden? Cornel West is actively running against Joe Biden, and Jimmy's Dore pushback is, you sound like Joe Biden for saying Donald Trump shouldn't win? What? What sense the way that they even started off? What are you talking about, Jimmy? Jimmy, what you're saying doesn't make sense, Jimmy.
So you're endorsing the Democrats' message in their campaign. And so now people can dismiss your candidacy and say, well, we got to worry about the neo-fascism of Trump, as if Joe Biden isn't worse, which he is. He's a bigger fascist, and he just crushed a union strike.
Cornel West is running third party. Hold on, we might have to switch up the view so I don't have to, because I can already tell as I'm watching this, I'm going to get hot. So let me just change up the format a little bit. Cornel West is running third party. So why would he be giving license to other people for voting Republican or Democrat if he's running third party? By definition, he doesn't want the Democrats to win. By definition, he's saying that they're both bad. What part of this is not? It's frustrating. It's frustrating.
Saber rattle with two nuclear powers, nuclear war, nothing more important than that. And what he's doing in Ukraine, you know exactly what he's doing, right? So he's the worst warmonger in the world. 300,000 Ukrainians have already been slaughtered in this proxy war that was provoked by NATO, which you know. So when do you think that when you say that about, when you call Donald Trump a neo-fascist and you don't say that about Joe Biden, what do you say when I tell you that you're undercutting your own campaign and you are propping up the Democratic message, which is that they are the lesser of two evil and you have to vote for Joe Biden so we don't have fascism? By the way, we already have fascism. As we all know, fascism is the joining of corporate and government to screw the worker. And that's exactly what Joe Biden, the Democrats, and Pete Buttigieg did. And so they will keep doing it, and they're not stopping it. And they're also for censorship, which is the hallmark of fascism. So this idea that Donald Trump is more of a fascist than Joe Biden undermines your own campaign.
This is what I'm not understanding. Jimmy, you're telling a man who's running third party that he shouldn't be endorsing the Democratic Party over the Republican Party. You're preaching to the choir, Jimmy. Jimmy, you're preaching to the choir. The man is running third party. What more do you want from him? What more? He has a record of decades of making allies, being an activist in the street. He has probably Bernie Sanders as a personal friend of his. And instead of throwing this sitting senator, this sitting leftist senator who was Bernie Sanders under the bush saying, yeah, Bernie Sanders is crazy, he's like, I can understand Bernie Sanders' concern, but I think we need to run third party. Why is that not enough? Why is that not enough for Jimmy Dore? Why is that not enough?
There's no doubt about that. And so what I would encourage you to stop doing that. What do you say back?
No, we deeply disagree on that, though, brother. I don't think, and this is where I disagree with Nick too, that, and I appreciate your advice here, cast in a respectful way, but we do, and I disagree with Brother Nick on this too, that I just got back from Mississippi. You know that. You know what the Jenkins and Parkins, the two brothers brutalized by the police. There at the church, the Klan still running wild, not just with votes, but terrorizing black folk. The Goon Squad finally got caught by the two lawyers, Brother Malik and Brother Trent. Now, what does that mean? That means that when you talk about fascism, you're talking not just about the rule of big money, not just the rule of big military, not just the rule of corporate power, so that it's oligarchic in essence, but you're also talking about dictatorial rule, no elections, the elimination of dissident voices, and then the scapegoating of the most vulnerable, which it could be immigrants, it could be workers, it could be black people, Jews, Arabs, and so forth.
Now, I do want to say one thing about this response that Cornel West is giving. we're going to get into it, and as we play, you're kind of going to see more of his perspective on this issue. But just for the sake of clarity, Cornel West is an academic. He spends a lot of his time in the books or speaking at Harvard crowds, right? So he's thinking so intellectually that he's missing the whole point that Jimmy's trying to make. If Cornel West was smart, and I say smart because of course this man is brilliant, but if he was tactical, I should say, and you can tell Cornel West is just telling the truth as he sees it instead of being tactical. But if he was tactical, what he would say is, I agree with you. Both the Republicans and the Democrats are bad. That's why I'm running third party. You can just have a very short soundbite, which is clear, the people can understand and the people can get behind. And you could ruin Jimmy Dore's whole argument by just undercutting it, saying, I agree with you. A lot of times we make it so we're walking into these hostile environments because you didn't see the very intro of this video. And I'll be sure to put a link to the video in the chat. But he's walking into this hostile environment and he's so defensive when if he would have just agreed, this whole segment could have been cut short. Because I really feel like if you watch this video as we're going to do, Jimmy Dore is really doing a hit piece on this guy. It's really bad, and it's really weird to see someone who paints themselves as a speaker for the left of the Democrats, a pusher of third parties, is going to paint Cornel West's argument so poorly. It's a straw man argument what Jimmy Dore is doing. It's really a straw man argument.
See, under Biden, what you have is a fascist dimension domestically, especially against black folk and others. You and I, the very fact that we're having this dialogue without being eliminated overnight, a fascist regime could completely call into question with the use of arbitrary power. That's what happens in the mass incarceration regime vis-a-vis poor black people and others. Right? So that is the fascist dimension. Similarly so in terms of militarism abroad. So that there's fascist elements, my brother, there's fascist dimensions. But with Trump, when you have...
Hold on. Now, did you catch that? There are fascist elements in the Democratic Party. So he's not saying that the Democrats are innocent. He's saying it very clearly. There are fascist elements within the Democratic Party. Do you think he's going to call Bernie Sanders a fascist? Because this whole conversation is starting off with him saying Bernie Sanders isn't wrong for having fear of Donald Trump. That's the only position Cornel West is trying to paint. But right now, he just clearly said there are fascist elements within the Democratic Party, but that doesn't excuse the Republicans. I don't think that's so crazy to say. Let's go back 10 seconds.
In the mass incarceration regime vis-a-vis poor black people and others. Right? So that is the fascist dimension. Similarly so in terms of militarism abroad. So that there's fascist elements, my brother, there's fascist dimensions. But with Trump, when you have calling into question transfer of power and so forth, that is not the same thing.
That's all he's saying. It's bad on both sides. So we need a third party candidate. Cornel West is actively running third party. What more do you want from the man? What more do you want from? Why is Jimmy Dore, as a leftist pundit, someone who's left of the Democratic Party, pushing third parties? Why would you shit on the only third party candidate that you have whose name is in the ring and respected?
So that doesn't undermine my campaign at all. The campaign's about truth.
100% undermines your campaign. 100%. You're shooting yourself right in the dick before you even start. So that's just bad. You're getting bad advice. I don't know who's advising you, but they're...
And this is another thing. Throughout this video, he keeps saying, I don't know who's advising you. Can Cornel West, this Harvard professor, this activist who's been in the game for decades, can he think for himself? And I'm going to play some clips from Kyle Kulinski too. They keep saying this. I don't know who's advising you. What are you thinking? You can't do it. Can he think for himself?
They're giving you horrible advice.
January. I'm a free man. I'm a free man, brother.
So January.
But I want to hear your argument. I want to hear your argument as to how Biden is more fascist than Trump.
Trump
just lay it out right quick.
Well, I'll tell you right now, the reason why the deep state Russia-gated Trump was because he wouldn't bomb enough to calm them down. So he wouldn't do enough bombing. The reason they impeached him because he wouldn't ship arms to Nazis in Ukraine, and he was against that. So that's
so just are you defending Trump as somehow being a person who is? I mean, I don't understand. I don't understand your argument at this point, though, man. What are we talking about?
Okay, so there's.
Do you see the argument that's going on here? The unnecessary argument. Why are they arguing? Jimmy Dore is saying there's fascism within the Democratic Party because Donald Trump didn't want World War III. Donald Trump didn't want us to go to war in Ukraine and make Ukraine a NATO member. What's his name? Joe Biden is willing to do so. Joe Biden is instigating World War III. Fine. You're not going to get a disagreement from me or Cornel West. But why are we arguing about this? Because what you're essentially saying is we need a third party option, and you're speaking to one. So why highlight something something that really you agree with? The only thing y'all are disagreeing about is degrees. Jimmy Dore is saying the Republicans are worse. What's his name? Cornel West is saying the Democrats and the Trump and the Republicans are bad. Why can't we just agree and vote third party?
I want to understand what the content of your argument is, because one can, in fact, bring critique to bear on the system as a whole with the two corporate wings. But somehow, what do you say to trans and gays and lesbian brothers and sisters in terms of their rights?
Oh yeah, I want to hear this answer. But before we get into that, hit the thumbs up button. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button. You can leave a comment. I'm responding to all comments. We're just going to review this clip. We're going to get into something that we've seen from Kyle Kulinski disrespecting Cornel West, Jimmy Dore disrespecting Cornel West. As a third-party candidate, you would think that the most leftist medias on YouTube would be somewhat supportive. As the only third-party candidate that gets any type of name recognition, you would think that Jimmy Dore and Kyle Kulinski would be his main supporters. They're really shooting their brains in the foot with this. Y'all be sure to hit the thumbs up button. We're going to get into it. Tell me if I'm wrong.
So that's again. Joe Biden is responsible for the mass incarceration, not Donald Trump. Who is more responsible for black and brown people being locked up and America being the largest penal colony in the world? Is it Donald Trump or would it be Joe Biden? By the way, this conversation is a loser for your campaign. Well, sitting here trying to make the argument.
It could be a loser.
Trying to make the argument.
No, you trying to make the case that somehow the Democrats are more fascist than the Republicans. The fascism cuts across the board.
But that's not how you say it, though. You say it's only.
He's saying they're both fascists. That's the whole point. Why not just agree that they're both fascists?
Donald Trump, you don't say it cuts across the board. You call Joe Biden milquetoast, and you call Donald Trump a fascist. So you're not saying Joe Biden is a fascist, really?
I said there's fascist dimensions to the Biden project. You're absolutely right.
It's but like you're campaigning for Joe Biden almost when you're doing this. That's what it sounds like.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
But that's what I'm not saying you.
I think that he's intentionally trying to torpedo his campaign. This is almost a hit piece. You're purposely, Jimmy Dore is purposefully miscommunicating and describing Cornel West's position. Cornel West is saying there's fascism in both parties. The Republicans are a little bit worse, but they're both bad. We need a third party option. I'm running third party. That's Cornel West. Jimmy Dore is saying, no, forget what you're talking about. The Republicans are worse. So what are you saying? Jimmy Dore is saying the Democrats are worse than the Republicans. Okay, so Jimmy, are you going to vote for Donald Trump? Jimmy, are you going to vote for Donald Trump? Are you going to vote for the Republicans? Or are you going to vote for the third party option? That's what I would ask him. If I was Cornel West out on live air, would ask him. So Jimmy, are you planning on voting for Donald Trump? Since the Biden administration, the Democrats are so bad, are you going to vote for Trump or are you going to vote for Cornel West, the only third option that you have? Because really, if you're saying that the Democrats are worse than the Republicans, where does that leave you? Where does that leave us, American citizens? Where does that leave us? If the and I would almost agree with I would agree with you, Jimmy. I would agree with you. The Democrats are worse than the Republicans. So now what? Now what, Jimmy? Jimmy, are you going to go with Donald Trump and the Republicans, or are you going to go third party with Cornel West? Because Cornel West seems a lot better on 95% of the issues. I think you would agree with Cornel West. So are you, unless you're actively campaigning for Donald Trump, what are you trying to accomplish here, Jimmy?
You are doing that. I'm saying that's what it sounds like.
What it sounds like to you. That's what it sounds like to you. And you got a right to be wrong. You got a right to be right. It sounds like to you. But it doesn't sound like that to a whole host of others at all, though, brother. Not at all.
All right. Again, I'm saying this out of love for you because I do have a deep love for you. I have deep respect for you.
I'm doing this out of love for you. I'm telling you that you're crazy out of love for you. It's patronizing.
You and we agree on almost everything except the message of your campaign, right? That's the only thing I would hope it would.
We agree on everything. So let's spend the next 45 minutes of this interview and instead of highlighting the things we agree on, let's go ahead and talk about the fact that the Democrats are worse than the Republicans. Really? That's what you want to talk about? Someone that you're saying you agree with? You got a third party presidential candidate on here. You can't find anything in common with him. You can't find anything positive to talk about.
Become even more folk. Well, let me just put it this way.
But are you suggesting that the message should be that Biden is a greater fascist than Trump? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that you should talk about fascism or any of that stuff. I think you should.
No, fascism is very real. I think you don't think fascism is real in the country?
We're living in it. We're living in fascism.
But I'm talking about escalating in terms of intensity.
It has since Biden became president. It certainly has escalated in intensity. They've censored everybody. They've crushed unions. They've started another war, and now they're saber rattling with 2 nuclear powers. I don't know how I don't know how worse it could get. And by the way, he still hasn't let people out of prison. He still hasn't given student loan. He's still denying us health care. He doesn't.
All right, Jimmy, you're right. You're right, Jimmy. Biden is not a good candidate. Cornel West is running against him. Do you have any questions for the man that's running against him? Like, why would you convince a candidate? Why would you convince someone who's running for president that the current sitting president is not a good guy? What argument are we having here? This man is actively running against the sitting president. Why are you trying to convince him that he's a bad guy? You think you don't agree on that? Shout out to the chat. Shout out to the chat. Forky says, next, absolutely. We must absolutely meet the working class where they are now if his campaign is to be successful in growing third party. I agree. We definitely need to talk about working class issues, economics, talk about healthcare, talk about student loans, talk about ending the war in Ukraine. These are different issues that they could have actively talked about on this Jimmy Dore interview. But no, we're talking about how bad a president Joe Biden is and why the person running against him doesn't agree. You think Cornel West doesn't agree that Joe Biden is a bad president as he's actively running against him? What is this argument? I don't understand. I don't understand what Jimmy is doing here. But shout out to you, Forky. Shout out to you. I appreciate you supporting the channel. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button. We're going to get more into it.
He's an enemy of the worker and a tool of military-industrial complex in Wall Street. There's no bigger fascist in the country than Joe Biden. The reason why black and brown people are locked up, again, isn't because of Trump. It's because of brother Biden. And Joe Biden is proud of that. He brags about that. He brags about the crime bill, and he will never apologize for it. So I'm just letting you know that I really want your campaign to pick up traction. This is the opposite way to do it. Who's ever advising you sounds like an infiltrator.
But why do you keep saying advise me? I'm thinking for myself. Brother, I'm a
okay, I don't mean to.
You see how he keeps saying that? I'm going to have to rewind that. Do you see? This is a repetitive thing. It's not the first time he said that. Whoever's advising you is an infiltrator. Dude, you are actively being disagreeable for no reason on a topic that you likely would agree on. You are torpedoing this man's campaign, what little of a campaign he has. You're actively going against it. You are both leftists. This is a third party candidate. Jimmy, what are you doing? What value do you think you're bringing here? Do you think you're to the left? Like where do you think you're going from here? You're saying Joe Biden is worse. You're talking to a third party candidate. You're not asking him any questions. You're saying that his campaign is in the ground. So who are you voting for, Jimmy? You're actively defending Donald Trump. You are actively defending Donald Trump to a third party candidate, Cornel West. This is where you will be in history. In history, when they go back, where were you in 2024? You actively went against the only third party candidate who had any type of track record, who had any type of critique for both the Republicans and the Democrats. You went against them. For what?
Pick up traction. This is the opposite way to do it. Who's ever advising you sounds like an infiltrator.
But why you keep saying advise me? I'm thinking for myself, brother. I'm a
okay.
free
I don't mean to insult
man.
you. That's not
just a question of advising.
Okay.
I don't ask who's advising you. You think for yourself. You're a free man too, aren't you?
You're right. You're right.
You are insulting him. I didn't mean to insult you. Well, you did. It's insulting. I'm insulted for him. Like, oh, if he doesn't agree with you, someone's advising you. This is a Harvard professor. It's crazy.
Right. Okay. I was trying to put it in a nice way.
I use that kind of language, my brother. You want to be respectful.
I'm trying to be respectful. That was my.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
I know it look like hard sometimes, but I appreciate it. But we just have disagreements on these things.
Again,
if I undermine the campaign for you, then you free to have your own view and vision, and people are free to listen to you and be persuaded or not. And I've got mine. I'm listening for your insight. Absolutely right. No doubt about that.
So let me just say this. So the point of running a third-party campaign is to offer an alternative to the two major parties, to bring together disaffected members of those parties along.
Okay, we're gonna move on to Kyle Kulinski's after this part, but I do want to play this. There's just so much stuff to break down here. What they were talking about, it was Jimmy. I don't know what happened to Jimmy. I feel like 2020 fried his brain. 2020 must have fried his brain, because I understand his distrust and his hatred for the Democratic Party. I really do. His critique of the Democratic Party is accurate. I understand it. But his solution as far as where to go, as far as alternatives, he is actively supporting Donald Trump. At this point, he's actively supporting Donald Trump and overlooking a third-party option in Cornel West. And that's not a position that a leftist can take. If you're from the left, you don't go so far left you become a Republican. You go so far left you become third party. That is, as a leftist, you do not go left of the Democratic Party to join the Republican Party. You do not go left of the Democratic Party to support Donald Trump. You go left of the Democratic Party to join Cornel West, to join the Green Party, to join any third party outside of the duopoly. If you're left of the Democrats, you don't end up right. You don't end up a Republican. You don't end up supporting Donald Trump. You say, I'm left of the Republicans. I'm left of the Democrats. I'm over here with the third party. That's the only place you can go. You either rock out with the Democrats or you come join the party over here, the third party, and you help us build. Outside of that, you're not a leftist if you're joining the Republicans. You're not a leftist.
Along with independents and others who feel alienated from the political system as it exists. And the best way to do this is by running on economic issues that unite us, but which neither major party is willing to address because they're both beholden to the same powerful corporate interests. The Democratic Party long ago abandoned the working class in favor of beating the drum on cultural issues, and now that's all the Democrats have to run on. So if voters are looking for a party running on trans rights and calling Donald Trump and his supporters white supremacists, they can already vote for Democrats. The role of a third party is to focus not on the identity politics that divide us, but on core economic issues that unite us along class lines, like Christian Smalls did at Staten Island. Do you think he led with LGBTQ, trans rights, and white supremacy, or do you think he organized along class lines? That's what we have to do. You have to organize, meet people where they are. So what is your plan to organize along class lines, or are you going to keep talking about white supremacy and all those identity politics, which are there, not from the ground up, from the top down, to make sure we stay divided? What is your plan to organize along class lines?
Now, do you understand the question? It's a fair question. It's a fair question, but do you see how he phrases it? I don't want you talking about white supremacy. I don't want you to talking about LGBT issues. We can only talk about class lines. Now, I agree. Trying to push a grassroots movement, you're going to need to focus and highlight the economics first, class lines first. I agree. Why not lead with that in this conversation, first of all? But second of all, we can't do both and. We can acknowledge that there are significant issues going on as far as school shootings, as far as the rise of the Proud Boys, the Boogaloo. I mean, you name it. There is a significant portion. Police, the FBI, have already done a study and said that the police departments across the nation have been infiltrated with white supremacist groups. The FBI have already reported this. It's already been acknowledged. So you're saying we have to ignore that? We have to ignore that fact. There's black people over here calling for reparations. This is a black man running for president. You think he's just going to ignore all the black people? There's a black man running third party for president. Do you want him to ignore his base? Because his base is saying, hey, you're left of the Democrats. What's going on with this reparations? What's going on with our economics too? You want him to ignore us for you? And you're actively torpedoing his whole campaign on here. You're one of the biggest podcasts that this man is going to go on. Do you think they're going to have him doing a lot of specials on CNN and MSNBC? There's not going to be any Democratic debates this year. There are no Democratic debates. Joe Biden's not going to debate him. This might be one of the largest audiences that Cornel West gets to reach out to, and you spend 45 minutes telling him that Joe Biden is a bad guy. And you want him to turn his back on his base, us black people, saying, hey, we support you as a third-party candidate. We support you. What's going on with reparations? What's going on with... And you want him to turn his back on us. Okay. Chat.
Well, I appreciate again the clarity and candor of what you have to say. We have profound disagreements, brother. When I organize around white supremacy, I'm not making some utilitarian calculation. I'm speaking as a black man who comes out of a tradition that's been terrorized and traumatized by white elites. And that does not...
Cornel West doesn't get the credit. Listen to this answer one more time. Because if you think about the way that Jimmy Dore was just trying to slander with this straw man argument, and the way Cornel West responds to this, you can tell I'm just telling the truth here. I'm not being tactical. I'm just telling you the truth as I see it.
When I organize around white supremacy, I'm not making some utilitarian calculation. I'm speaking as a black man who comes out of a tradition that's been terrorized and traumatized by white elites. And that does not in any way mean it takes me away from class issues. Class issues are crucial. Class issues are fundamental. But it doesn't mean that I'm putting up with white supremacy. One of the problems is that you get too many folk who want to talk class, and can't say a mumbling word about white supremacy, police brutality. Can't say a mumbling word hardly. Or when they do say it,
I gotta run it back. I gotta run it back. Cause you can tell Jimmy is hurt here. You can see Jimmy is hurt here. Look at his face. Cause he knows he's talking about him. Jimmy, you want me to stop talking about... First of all, if you would have asked Cornel West anything about economics? Why not ask him about student loan debt? Why not ask him about his stance on Ukraine? Why not ask him about anything economic? Why not ask him about his stance on healthcare? Why not ask him about his view on any economic issue, inflation, the crisis at the border? You can ask him about things that could have affected people's everyday life and economics, but you didn't ask about any of that because you know you would agree with him. But your message is stop talking about white supremacy, act like it doesn't exist. I want to hear it. I want to hear this one more time before we move on. I got to hear this one more time. Y'all be sure to hit the thumbs up button. Subscribe if you're new to the channel.
That's what we have to do. You have to organize, meet people where they are. So what is your plan to organize along class lines, or are you going to keep talking about white supremacy and all those identity politics, which are there, not from the ground up, from the top down, to make sure we stay divided? What is your plan to organize along class lines?
Well, I appreciate again the clarity and candor of what you have to say. We have profound disagreements, brother. When I organize around white supremacy, I'm not making some utilitarian calculation. I'm speaking as a black man who comes out of a tradition that's been terrorized and traumatized by white elites. And that does not in any way mean it takes me away from class issues. Class issues are crucial. Class issues are fundamental. But it doesn't mean that I'm putting up with white supremacy. One of the problems is that you get too many folk who want to talk class, and can't say a mumbling word about white supremacy, police brutality. Can't say a mumbling word hardly. Or when they do say it, you call it identity politics as if it's not connected to class. I'm hitting these head on. I'm standing with the workers when it comes to strikes. I'm standing with the workers when it comes to greedy bosses. I'm standing with the workers when it comes to obsession with profits and the needs not in any way being satisfied. But I'll never for a minute be silent or not raising my voice in terms of vicious treatment of black people, indigenous people, gay brothers, lesbian sisters, or trans. It's not an either or. And that's where you and I have a deep, profound disappointment. So if I see, for example, if I watch your show and I notice you hardly say a mumbling word about white supremacy because it's some kind of identity politics and I'm against it, but I don't want to talk about it. I only want to talk about what people hold in common. Well, black people are not going to hold it in common if you don't say a word about white supremacy, but maybe some of your white friends will. So who are you talking about? You're talking about in common. Are you talking about just the majority or what, my dear brother? I will never, ever in a million years not talk about vicious legacies of white supremacy, male supremacy, homophobia, transphobia, and others. But class will always be very much at the center. What brings you and I together is what? Our fundamental solidarity with working classes, not just here, but around the world. But oftentimes when I hear about your show and you say, well, you know, these identity politics issues get in the way. No, it's 100%. Not getting in the way. They're not getting in the way.
100%. They're used by so the Democrats, that's all.
Now, I didn't want to cut them off. Y'all might have to go back and just rewind that part because that part, Cornel West was just spitting fire. Anyone who knows about Jimmy Dore knows that this is an issue that Jimmy Dore has been facing the past few years. Jimmy Dore, because you have to understand there are issues that clearly make the suspected white supremacists, the portion of America that does, there are some neo-Nazis. Can we just be honest about that fact? There's some neo-Nazis, there's some suspected white supremacists. Can we point out the people in 2020? Can we point out the January 6th riots? There are organized groups who have infiltrated law enforcement, who are killing black people. I'm not saying that like it's every day and every killing is unjustified, but there are a lot of unjustified murders, and not even the murders, but what about the everyday interactions? Everyday interactions where these suspected white supremacists are able to disrespect and treat unjustly fine. It's basically a black tax with all of the black people being targeted for petty tickets, which I've gotten a ticket for crossing the street before. I mean, literally walking across the street. There's a fine that a lot of black people face. And you want this black third-party candidate not to acknowledge that. It's unrealistic on Jimmy's part. But Jimmy is so intent on getting no one to acknowledge the fact that white supremacists do exist. He's in denial. He's in denial. And I think he's in denial because he's starting to move right. He's starting to support Donald Trump. He's starting to support Donald Trump and the Republicans. And the only way he can rationalize that, his cognitive dissonance, is, oh, we can't acknowledge that there's white supremacists who more than likely are also fellow Republicans supporting Donald Trump. We can't acknowledge, we can't talk about it. They're there, but if we're going to work together, we can't acknowledge the fact that there's white supremacists in the Republican Party supporting Donald Trump. We have to ignore that fact because you're trying to move left of the Democrats and you have nowhere to go instead of supporting Cornel West, the only third-party candidate with any type of pull. Cornel just dropped some fire on this. Jimmy, I don't know what he's on. I don't know. I might move on to the Kyle clip, but I might play. Let me play a little bit more of this just to see where it's going, and then we'll move on to the Kyle clip.
They have to run on, and when you say that stuff, you just sound like a Democrat because that's all they have.
But
so
that's
if
exactly
you
wrong.
need,
if the talk about the dignity of black people in the face of vicious white supremacy makes me sound like a Democrat, you got the wrong earplug.
Okay,
you're not listening clearly. Because if you can't hear the critique of Wall Street, if you can't hear the critique of militarism, if you can't hear the critique of his foreign policy in Ukraine, and all you can hear when they talk about white supremacy is identity politics, then something's wrong with your earplug, though, bro. Right. Something's wrong with you. Okay. We just have deep disagreement with that. But
it's disappointing.
It is what it is. You are profoundly disappointing in that sense. But if I still love you, brother,
I still love you too. I still love you too. I know you. I know you. I don't disagree with what you're saying. I'm talking about having a campaign. I'm not. There's a.
Do you see how disappointing Jimmy is? I don't disagree with what you're saying. I don't disagree with what you're saying. There's problems with both the Republicans and the Democrats. You're running third party. You have a critique of the military-industrial complex. You have a critique of Wall Street. You have a critique of the duopoly between the two parties, both wings of the same empire. You have a legitimate critique. 95% of everything Cornel West says, Jimmy Dore is going to agree with. He's stuck. He's stuck.
Okay, so
but the campaign is not about utilitarian calculation either. I don't look at black people like a utilitarian calculation. I can't say nothing because these people over here somehow are alienated. I'm telling the truth. I'm fighting for justice. And if people feel as if to talk about white supremacy is alienating, then they're going to be alienated.
I got to play that one more time. Shout out to Cornel West, bro. He's actively one of the people who should be his biggest supporters are actively trying to torpedo his campaign. And he's like, well, listen, if you disagree, you're just going to have to disagree because I'm not going to shut up about these black people out here. That's one thing I like about Cornel West, the integrity and the consistency. Cornel West, his views have not changed as long as I've known him. And it's been over 20 years that I've been knowing him. I'm a young man. I'm still relatively young. So I haven't been knowing everything, but still.
I'm talking about my mama. I'm talking about my daddy. This ain't no abstract dialogue about politics in the Machiavellian sense. Not at all,
so
my brother.
What Bernie caught?
We marched together for class politics. We marched together because that's real. But if you think that talking about white supremacy is just identity politics, we got deep disagreement. That's all. So I'm sorry to go on, and you're very kind to let me go.
No, go right ahead. No, go right ahead. I don't. And honest, everything I'm saying here coming from my heart. I want your campaign to succeed, and I want.
From what you've seen so far, do you think Jimmy Dore wants his campaign to succeed? Do you hear what he said? I want your campaign to succeed. Does that sound like the truth?
I want you to have the strongest campaign possible. But Bernie caught on because he would always, if he was given a cultural question or an identity politics question, he would always bring it back to class and economics. And it doesn't, well, here I was talking to one of Bernie's campaign managers, and this is what he said. Yes, I personally agree white supremacy is one of the causes, but if I lose 2 potential allies because they roll their eyes and stop listening before I get to their concerns, I've already lost.
All right. All right. I think I've played enough of that. That's all I can handle from that's all I can handle from that segment with Jimmy. We're going to play a little bit of Kyle Kulinski and talk about how how Kyle Kulinski has been disrespecting Cornel West too. But I just had to play that the disrespect coming because he's speaking condescendingly about something that they probably agree with. I mean, shout out Forky one more time. I see Forky's in the chat. I appreciate you supporting the channel. I really do. Forky says, it's the canned sounding rhetoric associated with voter shaming conservatives that's counterproductive. Okay, so don't voter shame conservatives. Okay. For instance, if you say, I'm likely racist for liking Jimmy Dore, I could be offended. See what I mean? I liked Jimmy Dore. I still do. Jimmy Dore is very good at critiquing the Democratic Party from the left. Jimmy Dore is good at that. He can critique the Democratic Party from the left. Not only that, he keeps a lot of these other podcasters like Kyle Kulinski. And that's another thing. Jimmy Dore and Kyle Kulinski had war. Jimmy Dore has been sniping Kyle Kulinski for the past 2-3 years. This year, you can see videos from Jimmy Dore talking about how Kyle Kulinski is wrong for saying that the Republicans are better, the Democrats are better than the Republicans, and you can see them going to war all the time. But they both get on the same page when it comes to disrespecting Cornel West. Jimmy Dore and Kyle Kulinski are supposed to be 2 leftist pundits, and they're both supposed to be, we're left of the Democratic Party. We need to push third-party candidates. Kyle Kulinski started the Justice Democrats, supposed to be an alternative to the Democrats. These people are supposed to be pushing third-party candidates, but they get on the same page to demonize Cornel West? How? I see what you're saying, Forky, though. I see what you're saying. I like Jimmy Dore. I like Jimmy Dore. To this day, I still like him. I don't know what he was doing with this video, but I give him grace. He's human. I don't know what he's doing right now. I don't know what he's doing right now. He thinks that this is bad for Cornel West. From where I'm sitting, Jimmy, you're losing credibility. Jimmy, you're losing credibility. I mean, you're losing credibility. You're pushing down from my perspective, Jimmy Dore is actively pushing Donald Trump for president. Now, listen, I understand if you don't want Joe Biden to win. To be honest with you, I would almost prefer Donald Trump to win over Joe Biden. But I would prefer Cornel West to win over both of them. So guess what I'm doing? I'm pushing for Cornel West. I don't like either Joe Biden or Donald Trump. I don't like either one of them. So because I say Joe Biden might be a little bit worse because Joe Biden's pushing World War III and Donald Trump isn't, that's fine. But that doesn't make me support Donald Trump anymore. I don't like either one of them still. I'm going for a third party altogether. I'm not saying, oh, I don't like Joe Biden, so let me go push Donald Trump. Donald Trump might be better than Joe Biden, but Cornel West is better than both of them. I'm pushing Cornel West. And why, if you have the same choice, Jimmy Dore, Jimmy, you're supposed to be to the left. Jimmy, you're supposed to be the left of the Democratic Party. Why are you pushing Donald Trump over Cornel West? Kyle Kulinski, you're supposed to be the left of the Democratic Party. Why are you pushing Donald Trump over Cornel West? What are y'all doing? Shout out Forky. But I do see what you're saying. I'm not demonizing conservatives. Like I said, I got family members. I'm not putting their names out there. I got active family members. I'm talking about immediate family voting Donald Trump. All right, so it's fine. I'm not going to hate you because you vote Donald Trump. Fine. I kind of understand your way of thinking more than if you're voting for Joe Biden. If you're voting Joe Biden at this point, I think you just sleep. I think you just haven't been paying attention. So I'm not demonizing you for supporting Donald Trump. I'm not demonizing you for being Republican, conservative, or any of that. I'm just saying Cornel West is better. If I had to vote my conscience, I'm voting Cornel West. But shout out to you, Forky. Before we get into this Kyle Kulinski clip, Forky says, yes, I think he tried to give good advice. But the egos are strong. Yeah, I think you're right. West misrepresents JD a bit, and JD uses a condescending tone. 100%. I'm not conservative, just sympathetic. I feel you. Like I said, I'm not going to be. At least you're here. The fact that you're here and you're watching, that means that you care enough about the topic. That means you care something about politics. You care something about the Democrats. You care something about who's running our country into the ground. You care something about who's supporting World War III in Ukraine. You care something about the fact that America has the most people going bankrupt over medical fees. People losing their livelihoods. People losing their jobs, losing their houses, losing their savings accounts, going literally bankrupt because they were in a car accident or because they had kidney failure. There's people who in this country who are dying. I'm one of them. Last year, my kidneys almost failed. Thousands of dollars out of my paycheck, out of my savings account personally. I'm a young man, healthy. I'm in the gym. My kidneys still almost died. Listen. So I understand. I understand that there are major issues, and the fact that you're here listening, that tells me that at least you care something about these problems. So already, whether you with Trump, whether you with Biden, whether you with JD or Cornel West, the fact that you're here having this conversation with me, I already know at least you care. So shout out to you, Forky. Shout out to you. All right, so we're gonna get into this Kyle Kulinski clip, because it's crazy. Kyle is jumping out the same window. That Jimmy Dore is. Now, at least, let me say this, because they're both jumping out the window demonizing Cornel West, but they're on two sides of this issue. Hold on, let me see how I want this. I'm gonna play this video. I'm gonna play this clip with Kyle Kulinski in a moment. But let me just introduce this first of all. Jimmy Dore is saying that Joe Biden and the Democrats are worse than Donald Trump and the Republicans, and Jimmy Dore is ignoring Cornel West as a third-party option. Jimmy Dore is ignoring Cornel West as a third-party option and just shouting the Democrats are worse than Donald Trump and the Republicans. That's Jimmy Dore's only message. The Democrats are worse. The Democrats are worse. That's Jimmy Dore's message. But Jimmy Dore is still overlooking the third-party candidate in Cornel West. Kyle Kulinski is saying the Democrats are better than the Republicans. The Republicans are fascists. Donald Trump is a fascist. Donald Trump is going to do away with campaign restrictions so you can run more than 2 times. You can be more than a 2-term president. Donald Trump is going to end term limitations. Donald Trump will crown himself president for life. The Republicans are so bad. This is what Kyle Kulinski is saying. So Kyle Kulinski is saying we have to vote Democrat. Forget Cornel West. Kyle Kulinski is saying forget Cornel West. Forget the third party. We have to vote Democrats because the Republicans are so bad. Jimmy Dore is saying forget Cornel West. Forget the third party. We have to vote Republican because the Democrats are so bad. Joe Biden's going to start World War III. Joe Biden's sending billions of dollars to Ukraine. Joe Biden's, locked up millions of black men. So they're both ignoring the third party option in the room. They're both saying, Jimmy's saying Democrats are worse. Kyle Kulinski is saying Republicans are worse, and they're both ignoring the third-party candidate in the room saying, I don't rock with either one of them. Cornel West is saying, I don't support Joe Biden and his warmongering party. I don't support Donald Trump and some of his significant portion of white supremacists who support him. Not that all of his supporters are white supremacists, but there are some in that camp who do. Can we just acknowledge that as a truth? I don't like either one of these parties. We need a third party. We need a third party. Vote for me, Cornel West. That could be his whole slogan. I don't like either one of these parties. Vote for me as your alternative. That's Cornel West. But they're both ignoring Cornel West in the third party. I thought y'all were leftists. How do you get here? How do you both ignore the third party candidate? And it's disrespectful the way that they did Cornel West. We just broke down. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button as you're coming in. But we just broke down the way that Jimmy Dore was just going in on Cornel. I don't know where he was going with that. Now let's check out Kyle Kulinski because, good Lord, Kyle, what are you, Kyle? How the mighty have fallen. I used to like these guys. This is really the reason I usually don't do reaction videos like this. But I genuinely liked Kyle Kulinski, and I genuinely like Jimmy Dore. So to see them have these takes, I'm like, what are y'all doing? What's going on? All right, let's check this out.
Now, on the Cornel West front, look, understand something. I would like to talk to him and ask him, what do you think you're doing here? Like, what do you think you're doing here?
What do you think you're doing? I'm gonna let him. Let me not interrupt. I don't want to interrupt him, but just think about the way that they're breaking this off. The way that he starts it. What do you think you're doing? Hey, Cornel West, you 60-something-year-old man, Harvard professor. What do you think you're doing? Do you hear the condescension? He's so condescending. This is a 60-year-old man. This man is twice your age, Kyle. Kyle, how old are you, Kyle? This guy is twice your age, Kyle Kulinski. This man is a Harvard professor, Kyle Kulinski, and you're asking him, what do you think you're doing? I used to like this guy. All right, I apologize, guys. I apologize. Listen, that's my passion. I apologize. I want to play a little bit more, Kyle. I'll try not to interrupt him this time.
And ask him, what do you think you're doing here? Like, what do you think you're doing here? Do you actually think you can win? Because you can't, because we don't have ranked choice voting. We still have first past the post voting. So what's your...
So wait, let me address what he's saying. So I gotta pause it. It's something I gotta do. What he's saying about ranked choice voting is important. We need ranked choice voting. But why not support that? Why not say, hey, Cornel, I'm supporting you. And by the way, your campaign, Cornel West, you should be endorsing ranked choice voting. That should be on your platform, Cornel West. Why not push him left like that? Kyle Kulinski, you're saying, what do you think you're doing? You're not going to win? Okay, so maybe he won't win. So you're saying he shouldn't try? So what about Marianne Williamson? She shouldn't try. RFK, he shouldn't try. Bernie Sanders in 2016, he shouldn't try. Bernie Sanders in 2020, he shouldn't try. Because you're not going to win, so what do you think you're doing? I mean, with that attitude, is there nothing to be gained by pushing third parties? Should no one ever have an opportunity to vote their conscience? You should only be forced into voting into the DNC, who says we are allowed legally in court. The DNC legally in court had a court rule that they are allowed to rig their own primaries and select their nominee. Voters be damned. It does not. You have no right as a voter to select the DNC candidate. The DNC is a private entity who legally, by law, by Supreme Court, by court decision, has the right to rig their own primaries. You as a voter have no say in the Democratic Party. And you're asking Cornel West, what do you think you're doing? You're not going to win? I want a choice. That's what he's doing. He's giving people like me a choice. People like me who's not going to vote for Joe Biden, and I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump, and I don't want to stay home because I actually care about this country. Give me a choice. Give me something to root for. Thank you, Cornel West, for giving me someone to push. Because otherwise, I'd just be sitting back laughing at both of these guys thinking, hey, this country is done. this country is done. This country is done without a third party option. And if you care, now's the time to start fighting because you think 2024 is the last election. What happens regardless? Regardless of who wins. If Donald Trump wins, what about 2028? We're still stuck in the Democrat and Republican Party? What about 2032? Do you see where this is going? We're never going to have any third party option with this attitude. I'm sorry to cut him off, guys. I'm sorry to cut him off, but what do you mean? What do you think you're doing? He's giving people a chance. He's giving people hope. Not to mention, he's building a third party legitimacy so that in the future, if this man, Cornel West, with the highest brand recognition of any third party candidate of the Green Party, and this is fair use, then you would be able to say, hey, I can get on the debate stage. So it can be the Republicans, the Democrats, and Cornel West on the debate stage. All he needs is 15%. Win or not, that's leverage. Win or not, that's leverage. That's leverage. Win or not. If he gets 15% on the debate stage of the general elections, you now have a third party candidate who can talk to both of them, who can say, hey, I will endorse the Republicans or the Democrats depending on what concessions you give me. You only need 15%. You don't have to win everything in order to get some leverage, in order to get some pull, in order to get some concessions. 15% is enough. 15% is enough. That's a start. That's a start, but not with the people on the left talking about what are you doing. Nobody ever talks about the Libertarian Party like this. No one ever says, oh, Rand Paul, what are you doing? You're a libertarian. You'll never win. I've never heard a Republican disrespect the libertarians like that. I've never heard it. You got libertarians out here, Rand Paul, Ron Paul. You got libertarians out here taking votes from Republicans. I never hear Republicans say, what are you doing? You're a third party candidate. You can never win. The more I watch this dissension into chaos, the more I think the Democrats and the people who claim to be Democrats or quote unquote leftists, they're really against democracy. They say, oh, we have to vote for the Democrats to save democracy. Everything is shouting now you're against democracy because you're against third parties. You're supporting the DNC, who's argued in court that they can rig their own primaries, they can select their own candidates, and the voters do not matter. The Democrats are actively undermining democracy. And you, as a leftist, are helping them, Kyle. I'm sorry for cutting it off. Let me go back one more time. We're going to cut it one more time, and I'm going to let it play this time.
Then I would like to talk to him and ask him, what do you think you're doing here? Like, what do you think you're doing here? Do you actually think you can win? Because you can't, because we don't have ranked choice voting. We still have first past the post voting. So what's your highest goal that you think you could achieve? Is it the 5% for the Green Party? Is that what it is? So that you can get matching funds and make it more viable? But again, I hate to tell you, the Green Party and no third party will be viable unless and until we get ranked choice voting. Because until that point, there's always going to be this perception you're just a spoiler candidate.
How do you get ranked choice voting? Do you think the Republicans or the Democrats are going to support ranked choice voting, Cal? Hey, Cal, you tell me. Which politician, the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, is going to support ranked choice voting? You tell me.
Candidate. And by the way, if we get into a general election and it's Biden versus Trump, and Trump ends up winning because Cornel West got 5% of the vote or something, or 3% of the vote, and he gets blamed, that's going to set the movement back. So
that's not going to set the movement back. Let him get blamed. Let Cornel West get blamed. He's running third party. Do you think he cares? Do you think he cares? Do you think he's scared of getting blamed? Was Bernie West blamed for costing Hillary Clinton the election? Maybe. But Bernie Sanders bowed down. Bernie Sanders endorsed Joe Biden, the one who's getting us into World War III in Ukraine actively right now today. Bernie West bowed down. And now you're telling Cornel West he needs to bow down too? You're undermining your own credibility. I thought you were a leftist. You're saying this from someone who's supposed to be left of the Democratic Party. I think when he started to dye his hair, it went to the roots. It went too deep. I don't know what happened to this guy. I used to like him. Dude, what is going on with you? Woosah.
So much people are going to look at leftists as spoiled brats who are just getting in the way. Now, that's totally separate from the question as to whether or not the spoiler effect actually is real. But there's going to...
You're undermining your own arguments. It's separate from the question of the spoiler alert is real. So you're saying the spoiler alert theory is not real. It's ridiculous. You're undermining the credibility of that argument while arguing it. Because you already know this cognitive dissonance. You're the one who always says we need to push a third-party candidate. You actively started the Justice Democrats an alternative to the Democratic Party. How do you do that and then undermine a third-party candidate? Why are they doing this to Cornel West? I'm not going to call no cards. I'm not going to pull it on him. But I've just never seen. I didn't see them do this to Jill Stein. I didn't see them do this to Jill Stein. I didn't see them do this to Bernie West. I didn't see them do this. I've never seen them do this to a third-party candidate before, ever. I have not seen them do this to Jill Stein or Bernie Sanders. I've never seen them do this to someone left of the Democratic Party. I'm just saying.
Going to be a perception that it's real, and everybody's going to blame the left for Donald Trump winning.
Some of Kulinski's viewers are calling this a mask-off moment for the YouTuber, since he pretty much said the exact opposite 2 months ago.
The backlash that's happening online, there's a decent amount of backlash where people are like, what are you doing? Like, do you know, like, who these people are? And then I see a lot of people making a point.
Then get to thinking.
All right, I'm going to cut that. I'm going to end with this this tweet that he has. Let me make sure that y'all can see it. Y'all bear with me. All right, so you can see this is what he tweeted. This is what he tweeted. He said, as a left-winger who will not vote for Biden, I want you to know I'm 100% okay with you blaming me if Trump wins a second term. I mean it. Blame me. Then go to thinking real hard how you're going to get me to support your candidate the next time. Maybe even ask me. I'll tell you. What happened to that spirit? Because that's what he was saying in 2020. He's calling himself a left-winger. He says he will not vote for Joe Biden. But now you're shaming Joe Biden. Now you're saying blame me if Trump wins a second term. That was your spirit in 2020. What happened? Because now you're shaming Cornel West for running third party. What do you want him to do? I'm so profoundly disappointed in these guys. You know, I'm just now getting into this YouTube stuff, and when I first even considered it, these were two of the people who I used to watch that made me think, wow, I want to do something like that. Like, I want to talk about politics. I want to talk about what's going on in the world. I want to talk about news. You know, seriously, these folks were inspirational to me. I used to I'm talking about for probably a decade now. Fresh out of college, these two guys were some of the most inspirational people I used to watch. I was really a big fan of Jimmy Dore. I was really a big fan of Kyle Kulinski. I've only started doing this YouTube stuff like a few months ago consistently. I started this year with the goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I'm pretty much on track to meet that goal. If y'all could support me, hit the thumbs up button. If you could support me, smash the subscribe button. I'm just now getting into this. But I used to watch guys like Kyle Kulinski and Jimmy Dore. And to see them fall off like this, to see their whole script go away from the fact that we need third-party candidates, we need alternative options, to now demonizing the most recognizable third-party candidate in the 2024 election. I'm so very disappointed in these guys, both of them. They're disrespecting a legend, an icon in Cornel West. Cornel West is gonna his legend his name is gonna be good when he dies. Cornel West, he's been on the right side of history consistently for decades. He's good. Jimmy, Kyle, y'all were. What are you doing? What are you doing? Y'all do me a favor. Hit the thumbs up button. If you made it this far, you gotta hit the thumbs up button. Please, I'm begging. If you're new to the channel, smash the subscribe button. I'm dropping videos. I'm giving y'all content. If you agree with me, leave it in the comment section. If you disagree with me, leave it in the comment section. Tell me where I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing something. I paused it so many times. I'll be sure to put the video in the description so you can watch the full video. I'll put the Jimmy Dore's interview so you can watch the full video for yourself. But tell me where I'm wrong. Please tell me where I'm wrong. Hit the thumbs up, smash the subscribe button. Peace.